Welcome back, boys and girls, to another exciting episode of Feltboard Theater. If you have your Bibles this morning, we'll be in the book of 1 Samuel, chapter number 12. Chapter number 12. And we'll probably, with the story we're going to talk about, we'll probably make it all the way to chapter 15. But before we do that, it's a new week. It's a Sunday morning, a Wednesday evening. And I wanted to give you our new memory verse. Our new memory verse for the week is Proverbs chapter number 3, verse 6. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 6. It says, "In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. So the author is trying to teach us that in all we do, we should put God first. That's what the word acknowledge there means. It means to put God first, and God shall direct your ways. So what this verse means is, have you ever felt kind of like when someone tells you what to do, that you maybe knew more than they did, you knew better than they did, and you were smarter or maybe wiser, and that you were right and they were wrong? It would mean that you did not acknowledge their way as being the right one. And, when we don't fully acknowledge God, when we don't fully put him first, then he can't direct us. When we do obey the Lord, however, even though we may not always understand what it is that he's doing or what he's directing us to, we can count on him to direct us in the right path, in the right direction. We know that God knows what's best for us. So as we look at our story today, the people of Israel, they were super proud of themselves. They had a king now. They were just like everybody else. And the kings of the nations around them seemed so unimportant compared to their own king, Saul. They could not understand why Samuel was so unhappy. Now, you and I both know it was because, Samuel wanted what was best for the nation of Israel, and that was to put God first and not Saul. Their demand for a king was second best. The very best would have been for them to put God first, to acknowledge God, like we learned in our memory verse. But even after Saul had been crowned king, Samuel continued to warn God's people. He says, "You demanded a king instead of counting on God as your king. You wanted to be like other nations. Now you have a king. If you and your king serve the Lord and heed his voice, it will be a good thing. It'll be well with you. But if you turn against the Lord, then the Lord will be against you." And it was as if Samuel were saying, "In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." Samuel continues on, "Now then, stand at attention. I am asking the Lord to give you a sign that the things I have said are true. I am going to call upon the Lord, and he will send thunder and rain." Samuel prayed to God, and he called upon him, and the people waited, and they watched. If it rained, it would surely be a miracle, in that there was no rain in that country at that time of year. And boys and girls, soon it happened. The thunder started to rumble. The sky got darker, and then the lightning began to flash, and that rain poured down. The people were really, really scared, and they ran to Samuel. "Samuel, please, pray to the Lord. Pray to God for us. We see now that we were sinful, and we should not have asked God for a king." Samuel stops them. "Don't be afraid. You have been sinful. You've been wrong. But don't turn away from the Lord anymore. Worship the Lord with your whole heart. Don't worship idols. The Lord wants you for his very own people." He says, "As for me, may I never sin against the Lord by not praying for you. I will teach you what is right. Honor the Lord. Serve him faithfully with your whole heart. Consider what great things he has done for you." Even though the people had made Saul their king, Samuel was not going to leave them. He would still be nearby to help guide them in God's way. So shortly after this, Israel's enemy, the Philistines, they came out to fight against them. And when Saul's army saw the Philistines, they were scared and they ran. Some into the forest, some into the nearby caves, and some even went and hid in holes in the ground. And those who did remain with Saul, they were scared. They looked to their king to do something. But what could King Saul do? He must wait until Samuel came to lead them in a sacrifice and a special time of prayer before the battle. God had commanded them to do it that way. 7 days went by and Samuel hadn't shown up yet. Saul decided to offer the sacrifice himself. King Saul, the Philistines are here. They're going to fight us. They're going to wage war against us. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Well, we should be waiting for Samuel. He's got to offer the sacrifice. But it's been so many days. We don't have time to keep waiting for him. You're right. I got this. This can't be that hard. I can do it. All right, let's go ahead and see. All right, I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I should be able to handle it. No problem. Well, Samuel did arrive, and as soon as he shows up, he knows something is not right. Something is wrong. Hey, wait a minute. What's going on? What? Saul, what are you doing? No, you can't. That's not your responsibility. You're not a high priest. Well, Samuel, listen, I had no choice. I mean, what was I going to do? Everybody was deserting me. I didn't have anybody to fight the Philistines with. My army was getting smaller, and I was afraid that they might attack us, the Philistines, at any moment. You know, we didn't have the special sacrifice. I couldn't wait any longer. So I just went ahead and offered a burnt sacrifice for the people. Oh, Saul, you know better. You have acted foolishly. You know that you're not supposed to do that. That's my responsibility. God told me to do these things. You acted very foolishly. You have disobeyed the Lord's command. And since you have disobeyed, God has another man to be king. One who will not disobey him, but always obey him. If you had obeyed, your son would have been king after you. And Samuel left Saul. Taking the kingdom from Saul's family was a great punishment to the king. But unfortunately, disobedience, there are consequences for it. There has to be a punishment. You can be sure that if you disobey God, we're going to miss out on the best things that he has for us. And if Saul had been giving God first place, he would not have disobeyed him by doing what only Samuel was supposed to do. God never directs us in any way that does not agree with his word. So boys and girls, what was Saul supposed to have done? I mean, he was faced with some scary situations and, it seemed like what he was doing made sense. What did he do wrong? Well, he should have waited on Samuel. He was supposed to wait, and he didn't wait. Instead of putting God first, he put himself first. He figured he could replace God by doing the sacrifice, on Samuel's behalf, even though God had told Samuel to do it. And he was doing something he shouldn't have been doing. He wasn't putting God first. He was putting himself first. And we need to be careful that we don't put ourselves first, too. We need to put God first in all that we do. Tune in next week to find out what happens to King Saul. When is David going to show up? Tune in next Sunday to find out exactly what happens. Thanks, guys. Have a great night. Talk to you soon.